In 1983, the United States, along with 6 other countries, invaded Grenada. Yes, you heard that right, Grenada, the small island country in the Caribbean. But why would the US even invade it in the first place? Hey Whistorians, welcome back to the Why in History. I'm your host, Alexander. Throughout its long history, Grenada changed hands between Britain and France a few times. In the early 1600s, the British tried to settle it, but almost all the settlers were killed by the locals. In 1649, about 40 years after the failed British attempt, the French tried to take over, and even though diseases didn't ravage through the natives, they were successful, and soon, Grenada became a French colony. Things stayed that way until 1762, when, during the 7 Years' War, Grenada was invaded and taken over by the United Kingdom. As you have probably guessed, France wasn't exactly happy with giving up Grenada. After France allied with the US during the American Revolution against the UK, France retook Grenada. However, the treaty that ended the American Revolution, one of the many treaties of Paris, forced France to give Grenada back to the British. Nothing really happened over the next 200 years, and in 1974, Grenada was granted independence, with Gairy as Prime Minister with a sizable majority. After the 1976 parliamentary election, he was able to remain in power, albeit with a reduced majority. However, in order to intimidate his opponents in the run-up to the election, Gairy had enlisted the Mongoose Gang, a police force made up of his most loyal and violent supporters. The Mongoose Gang was responsible for the deaths of many vocal opponents of Gairy's rule and regularly intimidated the opposition. Because of this, the 1976 election was branded as fraudulent by both the opposition and the international community. And if you think a secret police force that intimidates the opposition and claims of a fraudulent election can only lead to chaos, then you're absolutely right. 3 years later, while Gairy was on a trip to the UN, Maurice Bishop, the opposition leader who had several run-ins with the Mongoose Gang, including one that led to the death of his father, overthrew Gairy's government in a bloodless coup. However, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Unlike Gairy, Bishop was a communist, and his new government was no different. It suspended the constitution and instituted a lot of changes, both social and economic. All this was happening during the Cold War, so naturally, the newly communist country realized it needed some new friends. It established close ties with all of the communist countries, but none closer than with Cuba. The two countries began cooperating in a bunch of areas, much to the United States' frustration. Fortunately for Grenada, Jimmy Carter was president of the US at the time, and because his policy was one of non-intervention, Bishop's government was safe. Despite this, the US and its allies still made life difficult by blocking financial aid to Grenada, among other things. By 1983, Grenada was actually doing pretty well, all things considered, but that was short-lived. Bishop's deputy prime minister Bernard Couillard had big ambitions, but unfortunately for him, the fact that his first and last names rhymed wasn't enough to overthrow Bishop and make him prime minister. In order to get power, he tried to convince Bishop to enter a power-sharing agreement with him. Obviously, this failed, and I'm not quite sure what he was thinking trying to get the guy in power to give up power voluntarily. Eventually, he got desperate and did something drastic. In October of that year, he put Bishop under house arrest and took over, but he made another blunder. He forgot to ask the people. Large protests popped up all around the country, and luckily for Bishop, one of the crowds managed to free him. However, Bishop was recaptured, and this time, he was executed. After this, Couillard did not become prime minister. Instead, Hudson Austin, the head of the military, seized power. One of the main differences between Austin and Bishop was foreign policy. While Bishop favored communist countries, he still wanted to be friends with non-communist ones. This was in sharp contrast to Austin, who wanted even closer ties to the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. Meanwhile, in the US, Ronald Reagan, a staunch anti-communist, had been elected in 1980, and after the coup, his administration realized it needed to act. The US threw together an invasion force consisting of about 7,650 troops, including about 350 from Jamaica, Barbados, Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who were concerned about the deteriorating situation inside Grenada. On the ground, the US faced about 2,050 troops, including about 850 from Cuba, the USSR, East Germany, and Libya. The operation started on October 25th and lasted 4 days. Even though there was some disarray between the different US military branches, US losses were minimal and the operation was a success. Austin was arrested and elections were held the following year. Despite this, international support for the invasion was almost non-existent. In a UN vote, only El Salvador and Israel joined the US and the 6 other invading countries in voting in favor of the invasion, with even traditional US allies like Canada and the United Kingdom abstaining. However, the view inside Grenada is very different than that of the rest of the world. Today, Grenada is a prosperous democratic country, and every October 25th, the people celebrate Thanksgiving as a public holiday in celebration of the US invasion. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and remember to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.